Jo Durrant and I present Jo Durrant's Beautiful Universe, which is an arts and science show, normally on BBC Radio Gloucestershire and also available on BBC Sounds. I've been doing this for around 18 months. Now the radio show is currently on hiatus because we've got temporary schedules due to the times that we live in, but I have been sharing some highlights online in a podcast style. We've gone right back to the beginning, so I thought today I would share a few of my favourite facts from some of those episodes that you can listen to online. Now, I've always had a passion for arts and I suppose always for science as well, but when I was younger, you sort of kind of got streamed into one thing or the other. But I remember when I was 7 years old, my aunt pretended that we were flying to the moon in my nan's back garden. And from there, I used to go around the house with my little red tape recorder and make members of my family pretend to be from other planets so that I could interview them. Well, my career highlight came in 2016 when I was fortunate enough to ask Tim Peake a question while he was on board the International Space Station, and that was beamed to the Cheltenham Science Festival that year. And that really reignited my love of space. And in interviewing people at the festival, it got me thinking that arts and science are really just part of culture. And we've often seen arts in that way. And in fact, going back centuries to someone like Leonardo da Vinci, both arts and science were put in the same sphere really. So it's something that I've set out to do on the programme, to treat them both as part of culture and just explore the world together, find things out along the way. So in the first episode, the very first guest I spoke to was Dallas Campbell, and one of the things I learnt from that interview was the first and last words in the play, Waiting for Godot, are the same as the first words that Yuri Gagarin said when he went into space in April 1961. Do you know what they are? Let's go. Another great fact I learnt from that episode was my interview with Professor Kate Williams at the 2018 Gloucester History Festival. She was telling me about the relationship between Elizabeth I and Mary Queen of Scots. And one of the things that I didn't know is that part of the reason for Mary Queen of Scots' downfall was because she got married. Now, a great fact that I learnt in the first episode was with artist Jean Bainham from Tewkesbury. She's really inspired by patterns in nature, and she told me about Fibonacci numbers, something I didn't know before. So a Fibonacci number is when you add the numbers together in a row to get the next number. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on. I think it's just such a brilliant fact. Now, episode 2 of my show was a 3D special, included interviews with people like Brian May, because he's a big fan of 3D photography. The person we have to thank for that is Charles Wheatstone, who was from Barnwood in Gloucestershire, and he invented many things that we take for granted, including the stereoscope, which allows us to see in 3D, but he also invented things like the electric telegraph, a really important invention, the concertina as well. And something I learned from Steve Rowley, who's from Gloucestershire and is a bit of an authority on Wheatstone, is that Wheatstone was very keen on illusions. Yes, a little bit of magic. Would you know who his assistant was in some of those tricks? Florence Nightingale. What a brilliant fact. And I love doing Jo Durrant's Beautiful Universe because at the end of every show, I always say, what have we learned? And I feel in 77 episodes, which is where we got to until the show went on pause, we learnt so many different things. Now, I love learning about items in Gloucestershire on the show because I've been curating my own virtual museum. So one of the things I learnt about in the first edition was the Temple of Vaccinia, which is found at Dr. Jenner's House, Museum and Garden in Berkeley, which helps us to tell the story of smallpox. And smallpox does remain the first and only human disease to be wiped out by human intervention, and all because of Dr. Edward Jenner from Berkeley. So we're very, very proud of that association. I've also learnt about Edward Wilson. So he was a zoologist, he was also a painter, and there's a rare survival in the Wilson, the museum in Cheltenham, from Scott's first expedition to the Antarctic. It's a fursuit. And Edward Wilson accompanied Scott on his 2 expeditions. He was a zoologist on the first one, and on the second one he was the doctor and also the artist. So the images we have of things like penguins, which really help to form our view of what the Antarctic is like, we have to thank Edward Wilson for. Now, another great Gloucestershire person, Gustav Holst, the composer, who I'm sure you will know the name of. Another item I added into my virtual museum was a gramophone. Now, this is found at the Holst Birthplace Museum in Cheltenham, and it plays an original acoustic recording of Holst the Planets. Something I learnt from that is that in these recordings, Holst would have to play, would have to conduct the planets multiple times. So the movement of Mars, for example, we know he would have conducted 14 to 15 times because of the way they were doing these acoustic recordings. Now, learning about space is something I love to do. You can tell I love wearing my space-themed clothing. So episode 5 was a bit of a space special, and that included the aforementioned gramophone from Holst Birthplace Museum. It also featured an interview, my first face-to-face interview with an astronaut, because remember, Tim Peake, he was in space when I had a chat with him, was Chris Hadfield, who went into space 3 times. And he told me all sorts of things and spoke with such passion and enthusiasm when we had a chat at the 2016 Cheltenham Literature Festival. One of the things he was talking about was playing music on board the International Space Station, and what an inspiring place it is to do that, and how you see 16 sunsets a day. Yes, 16 sunsets a day if you're on board the International Space Station. Coming up to the more recent edition that I've just posted online, episode 7, was a sensory edition, so learned all sorts of things in that one, including from Professor Barry Smith. Now, I've known Barry for a number of years, often had a chat with him at the Cheltenham Science Festival, and we were talking a couple of years ago about how texture can affect the way we taste food. So, for example, I like my poached eggs to be really runny. Other people like them to be quite firm, and although the egg is still the egg, the reason it tastes different is because of the texture. Something I learned from Barry a few years ago is about umami, and this is something that will come into play if you have tomato juice. So some people on aeroplanes will often have tomato juice, but they might not have it at any other time. And Barry says the reason for this is because tomato juice contains this thing called umami, and it means that the noise and the sound that you get on an aeroplane, which can affect the way that you taste things, it will interfere with that. If you have something with umami in it, it's immune to this effect, which means having tomato juice on a plane can actually increase your enjoyment of the rest of the food that you're having. And I suppose my final set of facts is something I learnt from Professor Adam Hart. Now, Adam is somebody who has been on the show regularly since almost the very beginning, doing lots of myth busting. So we've learnt all sorts of things about many different topics. But the first interview we did was appropriately at Dr. Jenner's House, Museum and Garden in Berkeley, along with Dave Watson from the Cheltenham Science Group. And they were talking about accidental geniuses. So this is really those scientific discoveries that happened by accident. What the scientists found wasn't necessarily what they were setting out to discover when they started their experiments. And Adam was saying that the 1930s in particular was really a golden age of chemistry and these discoveries. So here are just a few things that you may not realise were all discovered by accident. Post-it notes, super glue, the Big Bang, microwaves, and probably the most important accidental discovery, penicillin. I hope you've enjoyed these few facts that I've been sharing with you that I've learnt on Jo Durrant's Beautiful Universe. If that's whetted your appetite, then I do hope you'll have a listen. It's all for free if you go to my webpage from BBC Radio Gloucestershire. So just type in Jo Durrant, BBC Radio Gloucestershire. You will find all sorts of clips there, and that's where my previous highlights episodes are living at the moment. And I very much hope that the radio show itself will be back on air in the not too distant future. Thank you for your time.